Hello, my name is Delaney Melendez, and this is my presentation on self-concepts. So to open up this presentation, I'd like to ask a question. Who are you? Now, you probably can't answer this question right off the bat because it's super loaded. You're so many things to so many different people, it can be hard to define yourself. In this presentation, we will talk about the self-concept and how they develop, awareness and management of the self-concept, and what the Bible says about self-concepts. So, what is a self-concept? A self-concept is how someone views themselves. These are ideas that define who they believe they are. Many people refer to their self-concept as their identity. Like the opening question implied, self-concept is not a singular idea. It consists of multiple different ideas that combine and ultimately become someone's identity. Self-concepts are multi-faced, partly subjective, enduring, but changeable. So no one is simply one thing. There are many things. For example, I could say that my mom is my mom, but she's also a woman, a friend, a daughter, sister, and so on. You might want to also define yourself as your name, occupation, personality, things like that. Each of those descriptions kind of taps into a part of your self-concept, and in that way, self-concepts are multi-faced. Put another way, we're not just one thing, we are a bunch of things that kind of come together and create us. A visual called the Johari window separates a person's personality into 4 different parts. The open area is the first part, and it consists of general information that people openly share with others, like their name, hobbies, job, things like that. The second section is called the hidden areas, and this is more private information that you probably wouldn't share when you first meet someone. Could be a little weird. And then the third is the blind areas, and this consists of traits that are known to the public but not to the person who possesses them. And then the last one is the unknown areas, and this is all the unknowns of someone's future. And then this visual kind of represents how people reveal themselves to others. Self-concepts are not completely objective because they are partly subjective as well. This means that people create their self-concepts on both impressions of themselves and on true facts. This can make it hard for people to make good, accurate judgments because these judgments could be either positive or negative, and that's kind of where self-esteem creeps its way in. And one last characteristic of self-concepts is that they are enduring but changeable. It takes many years, maybe even a lifetime, to form a self-concept, but it's significant life events and when life circumstances evolve, your self-concept can change. So how do self-concepts develop? No one is just born with a self-concept. It's life events, personality, biology, gender roles, reflected appraisal, social comparison, things like that help us determine who we are. How someone is raised also has a really big effect on their personality. Who they spend time with, where they grew up, they can all heavily influence someone's behavior and self-concept. So research suggests that biology also plays a big part in shaping someone's personality. In a study done, they took twins who had 100% of the same genes, and they found that they were more similar in personality than twins who only shared 50% of the same genes, which are fraternal twins. And although people's personality is affected by biology and social influences, if somebody wanted to change a certain trait that they had, I think that they could if they put in the effort. So next, gender roles and gender stereotypes also play a big part in self-concepts. Gender roles are socially constructed ideas about how men and women should behave. Gender stereotypes, or kind of stereotypes in general, are oversimplified biased assumptions about a group of people, and they usually imply that people in the group are all the same. These factors can create the idea that certain things are expected for men that aren't for women. For example, men are seen as more masculine and women are seen as more feminine. These stereotyped characteristics can really shape someone's identity and affect how someone sees themselves. So someone's self-concept is also influenced by what they believe others think of them. This is called reflected appraisal. And in addition to this, many people form their self-concept by comparing themselves to their reference groups, people they spend time with. An example of this would be if you observe that you are more outgoing than most of your peers. You can conclude that you're a pretty outgoing person. So people will use others' personality as a way to determine their own. So next I want to talk about awareness and management of the self-concept and the self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's very important that people are aware of and monitor their self-concept and the self-fulfilling prophecy. The reason for this is because they can both influence and shape someone's behavior. The self-monitoring is an individual's awareness of how he or she looks, sounds, is behaving, and how that behavior is affecting others. So when someone is cautious and pays attention to their behavior, they can easily adjust themselves to properly communicate if needed. On the other hand, low self-monitors speak their mind without much regards to how others will react. Being a high self-monitor or low self-monitor can have both advantages or disadvantages. The self-fulfilling prophecy is a situation where someone makes an assumption or prediction and their actions cause this assumption or prediction to come true. So, for example, if you assume that someone's going to be rude, well, when you first meet them, your behavior could influence whether or not your assumption is true. The way you end up acting and your expectation will determine if the prediction is valid. So, one very important thing to note with this is that for it to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, it's not enough that you just meet someone and they're rude. It has to be your actions and your behavior that cause your assumption to come true. So in many cases, people's actions will actually cause their expectation to happen. And this is important to know because people are influenced by the self-fulfilling prophecy, and the way they communicate is influenced by it as well. So one thing to note about making assumptions is that in many cases, it's not the moral thing to do. People make assumptions all the time, whether they realize it or not. Sometimes it's just instinct. Many people will jump to conclusions and make up their minds before they even know the whole story. And oftentimes people are so quick to assume things because they think it'll make themselves look or feel better. John 7:24 says, "Judge not according to appearance, but judge on righteous judgment." So when we make false assumptions, it reveals more about what's in our hearts than what's in the hearts of the people we're judging. It's important for us to keep in mind that we don't know or see everything someone is going through, and we really know nothing about the challenges that they're facing, and we should give them the benefit of the doubt, if possible. So it's important to recognize how God sees us and how that should impact our self-concept as well. Although there are many external measures that we use to define us, we have to remember how God sees us, and He sees us as His children. Through God we have a new identity. Galatians 2:20 says, "I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave Himself for me." So living out the identity that is based on how God sees us looks like us not measuring our worth on external circumstances. We don't need to change who we are based on other people because our significance is defined in God's love for us. And it's important that we know this so that we can live by it and let that be how we see ourselves. When we live in faith by God, we know that He takes our identity and our personality and He uses them for His own greater, much better purposes. Thank you all for listening and for your time.